Manchester United have not been playing the best football, and I think I know why, and I'm about to tell you why with this set of instructions, these set of tactics, and it incorporates Manchester United's new number 4, Sofyan Amrabat. Of course, the games against Wolverhampton Wanderers, Newcastle, Nottingham Forest, Spurs, they haven't been great, and there is room for improvement. There's a lot of room for improvement, and these are the set of instructions I think Erik ten Hag is going to go with. And the formation, the setup with these specific players exactly, and I think he's going to find success this season for the likes of Manchester United in the Premier League as well as Champions League. So, you know, it is what it is. So starting off, we've got the likes of Rasmus Højlund up front. We've got Bruno Fernandes, Marcus Rashford, and of course Antony on either side of him. We've got Casemiro and Amrabat. Sofyan Amrabat, he is in the team over the likes of a Mason Mount, over the likes of a Christian Eriksen. Why? Because he provides more legs, he provides more speed, agility, defensive presence in the midfield next to Casemiro, who has looked a little bit leggy. I will admit that, it hurts me, it hurts my soul. But he does need help in the midfield, especially if Ten Hag is going to play a specific way. So I think, you know, playing Sofyan Amrabat next to the likes of Casemiro will help a lot more going forward in this team. We've got Martinez and Varane as our starting centre-backs. We've got Aaron Wan-Bissaka, and then we've got Sergio Reguilon over the likes of Luke Shaw, only because Shaw is injured. I know Varane is also injured, but I don't want to see Harry Maguire on the substitute bench, so that's why I've started Varane in this case. As the substitutes, we've got Martial, Garnacho, Mason Mount, Eriksen, our new goalkeeper, Dalot, and of course Victor Lindelof. Then in the reserves, we've got injured Luke Shaw, we've got injured Malacia, we've got injured Diallo, we've got Pelistri, of course, and then, you know, we've got Mainu, Heaton, and then a few other people I don't care to mention. As you can see here for the formation, I've gone with a 4-2-3-1 narrow. Of course, there's no left and right winger. They are left and right midfielders, so they will have a little bit of a deeper presence. I think with this system that Ten Hag's going to go with, it will be reverting slightly back to a bit more basic, a bit more, you know, just getting to learn the team now that Onana's in the team. And I think, you know, you can't really build off of last season, essentially, because the playing style that he wants to implement is very different. So it's more or less like he's ripped up the manual from last season and he's starting from scratch. And it is going to be very hard. There's going to be growing pains. We've seen it. So, yeah, I think that with this formation, it does get the best out of the players on the field. So, starting off, we've got one goalkeeper, 2 centre-backs, 2 full-backs, 2 DMs, 1 cam, 2 wide midfielders, and then 1 striker. So with the set of tactics going forward, Erik ten Hag will look to try and implement and instill a press after loss of possession in the Manchester United team. They have been doing it. They've been very effective when doing it. I think this current season they're ranked number 1 in terms of winning the ball high up the field. So you know that the press isn't the issue, and the team and their movements off the ball aren't really the issue. So that they have been fairly good with that, and we will see it more or less going forward. Whether Amrabat starts or whether Mason Mount starts in the team, I think we will be seeing a very solid, very aggressive press on the opposition. In terms of the width, though, it is set to 40. We saw against Arsenal, and I think a little bit against Spurs, we were very narrow, very compact, and I think maybe potentially we saw a bit more attacking dynamic with a team slightly spread out on the defensive end, because we were able to then try and plug those gaps, fill the holes, and then push the team forward and then potentially win the ball back nice and high up the field. Whereas with Arsenal, we were too compact to the point where they were able to more or less spray the ball around us in certain moments of the game and therefore start dominating us in areas of the field that we didn't actually want to be anywhere near, especially with them having the ball. I mean, the Saka shot straight at Onana, on a different day, Saka scores that. So, and it's just little situations like that I think, you know, moving forward, Ten Hag will look to try and rid the team of. So having a width of 40 will probably be the best situation for this team going forward. Having a depth of 70, though, creates a bit of a high block, you could say. It's not exactly the highest of lines, but it's a more solid, safe, and secure way of playing. And like I say, Erik ten Hag is going to look to try and somewhat go back to the basics with this team, somewhat rip up the plans that he had last year, because more or less those plans were somewhat dead-ended. So with this, he will look to try and, you know, instill confidence back in the team, build the defense back up. Of course, we have major injuries at the moment, so having a 70 depth will help a fair amount. And it still does look to try and press the opposition back into their own half in certain moments of the game. And then in terms of the build-up play, it is set to balance. Now, Ten Hag has numerous amounts of times, he's mentioned that he wants to have the best transition football team in the world. And of course, you've got the likes of Rashford, Antony, now Højlund, of course, up front, and Garnacho off the bench, so on. That can definitely transition very well, very attacking, very fluid-paced football. So that's more or less why I've gone with the balanced play, because yes, there are those moments where they try and counter-attack the team and try and, win the ball back high up the field and look to spring the attack on the opposition. But there will be times where they'll look to try and dominate the opposition and try and, maintain the ball and keep it, which is why I've gone with the balanced approach and not just a fast-paced build-up, because it's not realistic. But I would say this, if you are using these tactics and you are playing a very good team, a team that's going to try and dominate you, maybe a Barcelona, maybe a Real Madrid, maybe an Arsenal, a Manchester City, of course, maybe even a Liverpool in certain moments, I would probably say switch this to fast-paced build-up. That way you get your players high and wide and you get more spaces opened up for the opposition's back line to exploit. Now, as for the chance creation, it is set to forward runs. Now, this is to try and get the best out of the likes of Rashford and Højlund, specifically those players, because you do have the likes of Casemiro, who does have that nice ability to spray that long ball out wide, whether it's left or right. You do have Sofyan Amrabat, who does look to play a lot of forward passes into the forward line, and of course you do have a nice big strong target man who can chest the ball down back into the opponents, outmuscle them. We saw Højlund absolutely dominate. In my opinion, he dominated the stuffing out of Gabriel in the brief moments that he had on the field. And then, of course, you do have a very creative and witty Bruno Fernandes who can spray passes to that forward line. And what this does is it allows the forwards to try and make runs in behind, stretch the opposition's back line a fair amount, and get them in on goal 1v1 versus the goalkeeper more times than not, or potentially creating overloads in certain areas and opening up space for your midfield to operate in. As for the width, it's set to 70. Your fullbacks in this situation with this team, they will not exactly look to spread the play. I mean, I think for Reguilon, he will look to more or less make overlapping runs. It's not going to be like Luke Shaw, who will look to invert a little bit more into the midfield, join up with Casemiro in certain moments. It'll be more bombing down the left-hand side with Aaron Wan-Bissaka sometimes doing the same thing, but more times than not, it will be your wingers potentially holding the width. Rashford on the left, and he said Martial, Antony on the right, maybe Garnacho on the right. I mean, we did see Garnacho on the right against Arsenal, so maybe Ten Hag, maybe he sees him as a potential filler in that right-hand spot, so who knows, but more or less, the width will be held by your wingers. And of course, you do want to try and spread the opposition's midfield as much as possible to create those passing channels for your players going forward. And then as for players in the box, it is set to a cautious 7, and I say cautious because you don't want to overcommit too many players. The players in the box will be your 3 forwards, or potentially your 2 forwards with the likes of Bruno Fernandes joining in the attack, of course, in the box. And then as for corners and free kicks, as per always, it is set to 4. So taking a look at our instructions for the goalkeeper, of course, it goes without saying that Andre Onana, he is being set to be a sweeper keeper and of course come for crosses. Like I said, it goes without saying he more or less sometimes plays outside of the box. And as a Man United fan, it gives you a little hard to say, you're like, oh, just pass the ball. And more times than not, he finds the perfect pass. So that is why I've gone with his instructions to be set to super keeper and come for crosses. Of course, he is very aggressive when it comes to claiming the ball in the air from either corners, free kicks, just regular crosses into the box. He's very good at just claiming those. As for Martinez and Varane, they have the same set of instructions with slightly differing roles. Varane is set to his base set of instructions, with Martinez set to his base set of instructions with the alteration of step up. You want him to be a bit more aggressive. He shows that aggressive intent more times than not throughout the course of games, and that's what you're looking to try and replicate in FIFA 23, of course. As for your fullbacks going forward, Reguilon here is set to join the attack and overlap. Like I said, he does look to try and add width to the left-hand side, but more times than not, it will be Rashford. But if Reguilon does tend to get forward, Rashford is then allowed to cut inside and almost act like an inside forward at times. So that is the instructions for Reguilon going forward. And then as for Aaron Wan-Bissaka, a very similar role essentially, but slightly differing. He is set to join the attack, so you do want that fullback on the right-hand side to get forward, but he will look to make mixed runs because more times than not, Antony will look to hold that right flank down. And that then allows for more space to be generated on the inside, allowing for an underlap to potentially be, or the underlapping run to be made. As for the defensive position for Aaron Wan-Bissaka, he's also very aggressive, and that's why I've set him to have the step up setting as to on, because I think it more or less will replicate the aggressive intent that he does have and he does show on the opposition wingers at times. Moving on into our midfield though, we'll start off with Casemiro. He's set to cut passing lanes, have a balanced attack, normal interceptions will be on, and then of course be the deep line playmaker and cover the wing. So he will look to sometimes fill in on that right hand side for Aaron Wan-Bissaka, but more importantly he was set to have that deep line playmaker role, because more times than not we do see the likes of Casemiro playing that deep long ball either to the left or the right flank, mainly to the left hand side, because he normally is on this right hand side, so that switch of play into that open space does tend to help the likes of either Rashford or Garnacho. And what Ten Hag does like to do is try and flood the one side of the field, opening up a load of space on the other side of the field for that winger to potentially run into that space. And that will be the role that Casemiro does have going forward. And of course, with Amrabat being in the team, he is not the lo and behold only DM on the pitch. So it does allow him a bit more freedom to get forward. And I think with the likes of Amrabat in the team now, we will see a more attacking intent and a more attacking side from Casemiro in terms of his ability to get forward and be more involved in the offensive build-up play. So that's why I've gone with him to have a balanced attack for his attacking support. So he will sometimes look to get forward, and other times he'll look to stay back depending on the situation at hand. But more importantly, he is set to cut passing lanes to try and make it as hard for the opposition as possible alongside Amrabat, who is also set to cut passing lanes, drop between the defenders, have aggressive interceptions on, cover the wing, and then of course stick to position. So cover the wing makes sense with Reguilon's bombing on, which he will be doing more times than not. That left hand side will be very much open, because also Rashford will not always look to come back on defense. So you do need Amrabat in this position to try and, you know, plug the gaps, fill the holes, make sure that the team defensively wise is very solid. So that's my thought process behind that set of instructions for that. And then of course aggressive interceptions makes the most sense. You want Amrabat to be the bulldog in the midfield, making it very hard for the opposition to play through the centre alongside Casemiro, of course. That's why I've gone with aggressive interceptions, and then of course cut passing lanes. And then the reason for me setting him to drop between the defenders is because I believe that Ten Hag will have Amrabat in between Martinez and Varane, or Martinez and Lindelof, or Martinez and whoever, through the course of certain games, so that he can be that extra passing option for Onana going forward. He can drop in between the two, collect the ball, turn, drive into the midfield, create little overloads, and then potentially pass it off. He is one of the highest rated players in terms of forward passes. Well, this was in Serie A last season, so I hope he can bring more of that to Manchester United, his attacking intent going forward. So I think that will be the best situation for this team as we move forward in the Ten Hag project. And then moving on to Bruno Fernandes, he is set to come back on defense, stay on the edge of the box, drift wide, and of course have normal interceptions on. Now, I've set him to come back on defense because, one, it replicates the positioning that he does tend to take up throughout the course of a game. He will be anywhere and everywhere, and you do want him more involved in the build-up play, helping link the midfield to the attack, and he is going to be that link, of course, that player that does do that. He will look to try and, you know, drop deep, collect the ball, and then potentially hit a Marcus Rashford and Højlund or an Antony with a long ball, alongside the likes of Casemiro and Amrabat. They can, all three of them can do that. But more importantly, you do want him to stay on the edge of the box. It just creates another body alongside the likes of Casemiro, and sometimes Amrabat does get forward, and they will look to try and circulate and rotate the play. Any loose balls that are potentially headed out of the box, the likes of Bruno Fernandes and Casemiro, they'll be there to collect it, recycle it, and then look for a better pass or a better opportunity for the forward line. And then you're set to drift wide, of course, and that is more or less because he does tend to drift wide right at times. It's very much what Kevin De Bruyne does at Man City, and I do think that Ten Hag wants to try and replicate and more or less repeat that at Manchester United. So it does work out quite well for Bruno because he is an elite crosser of the ball. As for Antony, he is set to his base set of instructions, or the instructions are given for basically every single formation that we've gone with. He is set to come back on defense, stay wide, get in behind, and of course get into the box. It's very much a natural winger, out and out winger, hug the touchline, drive in, stretch the back line's defense, and cause havoc in behind. And that's more or less what Antony is very good at. And of course, working back, he works his socks off at times, helping out his fullback at times. I mean, we saw against Arsenal, he stopped Martinelli quite a few times down that left-hand side for Arsenal, the right-hand side for Man United, just with his tracking back ability. And then as for Rashford, he is said to have a basic defensive support, so he won't always look to track back and help out the likes of Reguilon, and that's why if Reguilon and Rashford are not doing so, that's why you need Amrabat on this left-hand side in order to fill in those gaps, because more times than not, the defense or the opposition will look to try and exploit that side of the defense. And of course, Martinez is not the best at covering the lanes and the channels on this left-hand side, so that's why you would need Amrabat in that situation. But as for Rashford, he's here to have a balance width, so he will sometimes look to try and hold the width of the field, but if Reguilon does bomb on past him, he will look to cut inside and act more as an inside forward at times, pairing up with the likes of Højlund up top. And then, of course, getting behind, Rashford is one of the best players at having the ability to run in behind, stretch the defense vertically, of course, and exploit the space in behind. He is very, very pacey, very, very quick. And in FIFA 23, it's the best set of instructions to get the best out of him. But it's also something that Ten Hag does look to do on a regular basis. And then, of course, getting to the box, you do want to making those back post runs and being able to be a bit more of an attacking threat in that in the defense's, or in the opposition's box, I should say. And then moving on to Højlund, finally, our striker, our star boy, hopefully, he is set to have a balanced width, so he will just sometimes run the channels into those wide areas, collect the ball, and then drive into the box. But more importantly, he will look to sometimes stay central and be the focal point in the attack and have other players build up off of him, because he is that big, physical, strong player. And I have compared him to the likes of Erling Haaland, not in terms of him scoring 36 goals in his first season at Manchester United. I don't think he's going to do that. But in terms of his natural raw talents and the physical attributes that he does have, I think it's very comparable to the Manchester City striker. And of course, just like the Manchester City striker, he does look to get in behind, exploit the space that the defense does leave in behind. He is tall, he is strong, but more importantly, for this set of tactics, he is very quick, and he is going to try and stretch the back line with Rashford on a more vertical scale. And then he is set to have aggressive interceptions on. He will look to try and lead the press at times. He'll look to try and close down the back line, the goalkeeper, the defenders at times. He's very good at closing down those passing angles and the passing lanes, and that is why I've set him to have the aggressive interceptions on. And then basic defensive support is also set to be on, because you don't just want him dropping off too much, and you don't just want him staying forward and not being involved in the link-up play. He did drop off versus Arsenal, drawing out the likes of Gabriel at times, linking up play, the ball into feet, passing off, and then making runs in behind. And that's more or less how you can try and stretch that back line vertically on a normal basis. But you do want him to sometimes be involved in the build-up play. You don't just want him hanging up top and looking just to tap in the goals, because that's not I mean, he does have that element to his game, but he does have a lot more in his locker that he can afford to be more involved in the build-up play going forward. So yes, that is my Erik ten Hag 4-2-3-1 updated set of tactics for FIFA 23. Of course, this does incorporate the likes of Amrabat and so on in the team, and it is a slight tweak or two to the original 4-2-3-1 set of tactics that we did end up making in the first place. So if you have enjoyed this video, please hit the thumbs up button. I would absolutely appreciate that. Subscribe if you are new. But most importantly, I hope you have a damn great day. I'm out.